All right. Good morning, everyone. How we doing? Obviously, I'm not in my usual location. I am at a polling site because today is March 3rd. It is primary election day in Texas. Texas is one of the first primary elections in all of the United States. So we are kicking off primary midterm season in all of the U.S. today, Tuesday, March 3rd. Super exciting. This polling location, this is at the Rock Gym in Pflugerville. The address is 702 Pecan Street. And I know that because I've been coming here so often. This is a very busy, steady location. There have been a lot of voters, a lot of activity, a lot of excitement, and there are a lot of polls open today. So if you have not yet voted, today is your opportunity. The polls are open 7 a.m., 7 p.m. You have to be in line by 7 p.m. in order to cast your ballot. So please do exercise your right to vote if you have it, because you are speaking for so many people who cannot vote. And, it's our basic civic duty. So as per the usual, we're here on Tuesday mornings in English talking through immigration things. So we've got lots of immigration news to cover, and I am available for your live questions as well. And anything you want to ask about, you can ask about the campaign. As you know, if you follow me, I'm on the ballot right inside that building, number 5 on the ballot for House of Representatives in District 50, which is Northeast Austin. It's a big geographic district from essentially like 290 over to Mopac up to 45. So a lot of Pflugerville, right where I'm standing right here. Very diverse, very interesting community. People from lots of different cultures reside in HD50. It's been so cool for me to get to know the district even better on the campaign trail. I've gotten to go to a few Lunar New Year celebrations and watch the dragon dancers in Chinatown and eat amazing food. It's been so much fun. This location is right next door to a really great Venezuelan restaurant called Fogonero. They have fantastic empanadas. Anyway, there's just a lot of culture and vibrancy here in HD50, and it's been a blast for me to get to know the district. I live in the southern part of the district. I have for 20 years, and when I heard that Tallarico was running for U.S. Senate, I decided that I would launch myself a campaign to get into his seat, and it has been such an adventure. It's been such a journey for me, and I've made so many friends. I've had so many supporters. Some of you watching have been amazing supporters, and it has been really uplifting for me to have all of your love and support. Tonight we are having a watch party. The address is 1405 Wilshire Boulevard, and you are welcome to come. I just learned that they're not going to be dropping early poll results at 7:15, which they usually do. So we're not going to have answers to the election results until like 9 o'clock. So it's going to be a very late party for this old gal. But it'll be good because it'll give us lots of time to hang out and listen to music and just enjoy friendships. I mean, this has really been, I've talked about this a lot, like my slate of candidates. There are 6 of us in my particular race in the Democratic primary for HD50, and we've kept it really high level, really positive. We've talked a lot about the issues. We actually agree on a lot of the issues, most of us. We bring different backgrounds and different areas of expertise. In different, flavors of fight to the campaign and would to the Capitol, but we haven't attacked each other. And I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that. And, a runoff is likely in this election, and I hope that it stays above board in a runoff. So anyway, that's what's happening. Tuesday, March 3rd, kicking off the midterms. Midterm season is upon us. The Democratic voter turnout is like through the roof. It's so exciting. So, can you feel it? The excitement in the air? Anyway, let's talk about the news of the week, immigration news. So, some good news. How about it? A judge, there's a lot of good news coming out of federal courts, of course. So a judge in Chicago has ordered the release of dozens of people who were detained by ICE without warrants or probable cause during Operation Midway Blitz, which was the raids that they conducted in Chicago. This was like before Minnesota, when they landed that helicopter on top of that apartment building and took all those children out in the middle of the night. Well, no surprise, many people in Operation Midway Blitz were arrested without probable cause, and there were 53 arrests in that court in this particular case. This judge has ordered the release of 32 people by noon on March 5th, which is Thursday. And then he's reviewing more people and probably order the release of more people. So what I think is great about that is that we know, of course, that in the United States of America, the Constitution protects all people and that there is a Fourth Amendment right against unreasonable search and seizure. But the Trump administration obviously believes that they don't have to follow the Fourth Amendment when they're going after people. And they have issued memos that they don't have to have probable cause, that they can detain people, under racial profiling, that they don't even have to have warrants to enter people's homes. And all of the federal courts that are reviewing these questions are disagreeing with the Trump administration, as they should. But this is what we need to continue to see happening. So that's good news. Next news item is regarding Syrians who are under TPS. So temporary protected status is a status for people who can't return to their country because there's been some sort of infrastructure collapse. And of course, the crackdown in Syria on dissidents and the war there is what led to people who were in the United States obtaining temporary protected status. Of course, the Trump administration revoked it very quickly and without due process, and the federal courts have disallowed the revocation in the manner in which Trump did it, and they've now asked the Supreme Court to review the revocation of Syrian TPS. Next, in response to an inquiry from Senate Democrats to Kristi Noem, DHS Security, about the deportation of Dreamers, she responded to say that they had detained up to 261 Dreamers in the last year, and that 86 of those Dreamers had been deported, which infuriated these Senate Democrats. And there are further inquiries looking into this, but those numbers are big. I was surprised by those numbers. I would have guessed that there were fewer than 100 Dreamers based on just my own review of like social media and articles and all of that. But 261 is a lot. So, and really concerning because obviously, Dreamers grew up here, don't tend to have criminal histories. If they still have DACA status, then they don't have criminal histories, because you can't have a serious criminal history and get DACA. Next, and this won't surprise you either. This is the headline. ICE struggles to vet recruits amid U.S. immigration enforcement push, internal email shows. Reuters got its hand on an email within ICE in which they were just discussing how the difficulties that they're having recruiting and running background checks on their ICE agents. And they were, they said, due to the high volume of new hires, installed background checks would create uncertainty for field offices when allegations arise to actions before ICE, and that allegations should be referred to the Internal Integrity Investigations Unit. Doesn't that sound made up? The Internal Integrity Investigations Unit. It's just like a closet. It's just like a broom closet within ICE. Just stick it in the door. We'll refer it there. But I mean, it's actually not funny that all of these freaking thugs with terrible criminal histories, as we've seen, are being recruited and hired by ICE, and they're not doing criminal background checks on these people. Oh, because we have a backlog. Now, another good news item. This is from notice.org. This is a federal court has ruled that the Trump administration's third country deportation practices are not legal. And this is where the Trump administration deports someone without notice to a third country of which they are not a national of, and they just arrive in this country and had no notice and know nothing about it. And there's a quote from this ruling in which the judge says, the Department of Homeland Security has adopted a policy whereby it may take people and drop them off in parts unknown in so-called third countries. And as long as the department doesn't already know that there's someone standing there waiting to shoot, that's fine, he wrote, citing comments from a hearing on the case. It's not fine, nor is it legal. Hear, hear. So I love it when federal judges start telling the truth. So that's the end of the news of the week. It's actually kind of a quiet news week, which we'll take that whenever we can, because it's been a loud election week. We are standing in front of the polling location in Pflugerville at 702 Pecan Street. This is a very busy polling location in my district, District 50. I'm here talking to voters, handing out literature. We've got LGL or KLG crew at all of the polling sites in the district today, all day talking to voters. And seems to be steady presence of people showing up to cast their ballots. And it's your opportunity, if you haven't voted yet, to make sure you get out and vote. You have until 7 p.m. tonight to get in line. I will tell you, there's a huge rush after 5 o'clock, after everybody gets off at work, and the lines can get kind of long. So if you have capacity to do it earlier in the day, right now, like before the lunch rush, is generally a kind of quiet time, and then late afternoon is kind of quiet. But I anticipate we're going to have a lot of people at the polls based on the turnout in early voting. Okay, let's start answering your live questions. Can ICE arrest someone at court even if their case was dismissed? Yes, they can. We are still seeing courthouse arrests go down, and about, 80% of the time, people are getting arrested. It really is dependent upon what's happening that day and whether ICE agents are there taking people. But when someone's case gets dismissed and they walk out, if they're not actively in legal status, they are vulnerable for being detained. And so it's really important to work with a lawyer in advance of your hearing. Many of the judges will allow virtual hearings, but some of them you have to submit a motion to request a virtual hearing. So give us time. If you've got a court case and you know it, even if your next hearing isn't until 2027, hire an attorney as soon as you can, and we can start moving on having a virtual hearing scheduled, because sometimes they move your hearing date up and you'll just get a notice like, surprise, your hearing date is next week. And they might, they are conducting courthouse arrests. It's very much still. TikTok, I voted for you during early election. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your support. It's been, at the polls, there seem to be a lot of people who know about my campaign, and they're already planning, like I'm already on their list. There's so many ways to reach voters, and there's like conventional wisdom with campaigning. Of course, we all know about door knocking, right? And sending out mailers before the election. And I do, I'm on social media a lot. So that's that's like my niche corner, is doing a lot of social media videos and outreach. And, we'll find out tonight whether it's worked. But here's my commitment. Even if, I don't win, I don't make the runoff, it's going to be fine, because we have so much work to do. I have so much work to do. On behalf of the immigrant community, I will not rest. So whether I'm inside the Capitol or outside of the Capitol, we're still going to be making waves. Okay. So TikTok, would it be risky leaving the U.S. on advance parole if I only have my receipt notice and my passport? My DACA and other documents got stolen. Yes, it would be risky. I would not leave without proof of your DACA approval or a work permit, a valid work permit. One thing you could do is go to USCIS customer service and schedule, it's called an info pass appointment, or you could call customer service. I will warn you that USCIS customer service is one of the worst customer service experiences that you will probably ever have. It is maddening in terms of like the wait times and limited helpfulness and all of that. So just prepare thyself. But there is something called an info pass appointment where they'll schedule you and you can get a stamp on your passport that says you're in valid DACA status. But definitely you need to have proof of your valid DACA status if you're going to travel outside of the country. Definitely. Heather on TikTok, found you at an Austin protest last summer and have been supporting ever since. Awesome, Heather. Thank you so much. These protests have been so great. We have really great protest organizers here in Austin, and I'm so grateful to them. It's kind of a thankless job. I mean, the logistics that go into throwing an event within only a few weeks' notice for potentially tens of thousands of people who need bathrooms, who need water, who need logistical information, and making all of that happen and not pissing off the city. It's such a job. And our organizers are like coordinated and powerful and really good at what they do and tireless. Special shout out to Hands Off, is a really great organization in Austin that throws good events, and Indivisible. And basically, all these different like protests and stuff pop up and marches. And in volatile times like we're in now, it's important to know that if you're going to a protest, that safety has been considered and nonviolence has been considered. And you're going to be in a place where there's not people like rabble rousing or trying to create drama, right? Where people are peacefully protesting and sharing messages that we agree with. And so it's really helpful to know who the organizers are and make sure it's a vetted and good one. And so we've got a huge rally coming up on March 28th in Austin. There's also one in San Marcos. I'll be attending both. San Marcos is in the morning, and then I'll be driving to Austin in the afternoon. My parents have been learning and writing some protest songs and chants, you know, a la happened in Minnesota. There's this big movement of protest singing that's happening ever since everything went down in Minnesota. And there's not really a whole lot like the feeling of being with a group of singers singing protest chants. You know, when you're feeling low and scared and, you know, we're going to war with Iran and people are getting shot in the street. And then you get around a bunch of people who believe in love and goodness and optimism and they sing songs together. Like, you want a boost, that's the way to do it. So mark your calendars for March 28th for the No Kings rally, because that's going to be a good one. Oh, hello from Minnesota, Ari Bobari. First of all, I love your name. Hello. Hi, all the way to Minnesota. Minnesota has a special place in my heart. I lived there very briefly during my adolescent years, and which was a good time because I enjoyed the snow. Now I think it would be a little harder for me. And my in-laws all live there. My husband's from the farm in southern Minnesota, so I spent a lot of time in Minnesota. And you know, Minnesota people, we saw this in the raids that happened in Minnesota and the way that the community like came together in support and really very quickly set up a structure of support of food and all of the things that were needed. It wasn't just the protest, it was also the support and love. And that was like so inspiring and admirable and so very Minnesota. So I can tell you here in Austin where I live, people in the organizing space and all of that like regularly talk about like, how can we emulate what they did in Minneapolis? We want to be like them. So everybody's watching you and taking inspiration from the way that you guys showed up for your immigrant communities. Okay, next question. What programs currently allow undocumented immigrants to get work authorization? So work authorization it's very complicated. Sorry to say that. But essentially, you generally get work authorization as a temporary measure on your way to some type of permanent status. Not always. Like, you could get work authorization for a student visa or a work visa, but Dreamers can get work authorization. People who are applying for a humanitarian visa, like a T visa crime victim or labor trafficking victim, or a U visa crime victims visa, or VAWA, or if you're applying for adjustment of status to get your green card and you're in process in all of these, there's a point at which you'll get a work permit while you're waiting for the final determination. So generally the ways that people get legal status are either through employment, which is the hardest way because it's very strict. You generally can't get legal status if you've been in the country undocumented through employment, unless you can get a waiver, which is hard, right? Then there's family. You get it family through a U.S. citizen or permanent resident, spouse, parent, or child. And those can have long wait times, but they're a little less strict than employment cases. And then there's humanitarian cases for people who have suffered crime or abuse at work or domestic violence or something like that. And then finally, there's people who find themselves in deportation proceedings and they're seeking a defense to deportation. So those are like the four main categories of how people get legal status. And it's one of the reasons why I say, if you don't know what to do for yourself, the best thing to do is to get a consultation with a lawyer, because we're exploring all of these different avenues and everybody has a different life history, a different case, and it's different for every single person. So I'll pause for a moment and remind you guys where I am. I'm outside, obviously. I'm very windblown. But something tells me it's not like model windblown. It's like crazy windblown, but you'll forgive me, I hope. So today is March 3rd, Tuesday, March 3rd. It is primary election day. Texas is one of the first states to have its primary elections during midterm season. So we are kicking off midterms. We are very excited about the midterms and what they're going to mean for this country and the way that we are going to be able to turn things around. We have some really exciting races right here in Texas. Of course, the U.S. Senate race and the Democratic primary between Tallarico or Crockett. If you're watching this, go ahead and comment. Are you on Team Tallarico? Or are you Team Crockett? And maybe say a few words about why. This is one in which reasonable minds can definitely differ. And I've got friends all over the place on the question of Tallarico or Crockett. And as you know, I'm on the ballot too for Texas House of Representatives to replace Tallarico in his seat in HD 50, which is Northeast Austin. So right now I'm in Pflugerville, 702 Pecan Street. This is a good voting location, good steady. You can see there's no line right now. Sometimes when it's really busy, there's a line that wraps around this building, but people are just going right in voting. And so come on down. Lunchtime is busy. There's a lunchtime rush, and then there's an after work rush. So if you have capacity in your day-to-day to not come at lunch or after work, you'll probably wait less time if you do it that way. But most people, have to come on lunch break or after work, in which case, as long as you get in line by 7 p.m., you will be able to cast your vote. Heather, how can we help voters understand that immigration is good for our economy? Great question. So what I would point to, Heather, it's always data and statistics is better than stories, I think. When you're talking to people who have heard the stories of, immigration equals bad and dangerous and that rhetoric, if you try to counter with immigrants are good, it doesn't tend to go anywhere because it's just hits up against a belief that's already been formed. So it's better to talk about the economics and the data around immigration and how as an economy we actually need immigration so very much. And there was a really helpful study that just came out within the last month from the Cato Institute, which is nonpartisan. So it's not like skewed, right, because they have an opinion. This is just a study. And it was an unprecedented study in that they looked at immigration impact economically over a 30-year period. So it was a really long-term study, and they looked at all levels of government. So they looked at like city, county, state, and the federal level. And what they found is that at each of those levels, immigrants have contributed more in taxes than they have received in services. And that the result of having immigrants, undocumented immigrants, I will clarify, it has resulted in a $14 trillion surplus that we would not have otherwise had. So like huge impacts from immigration. And that's usually what I talk about when people are like anti-immigrant is the need for our economy and our aging baby boomers. And we need people to care for our aging baby boomers. It's just really, our country really would fall apart without immigrants. Here in Texas, 1 in 5 people that lives in the state is an immigrant. And depending on where you live, if you're in a metro area, almost half of our doctors are immigrants. If you're more rural, it's a little bit lower than that. But like 1 in 4 doctors is an immigrant. Similar for nurses. And obviously construction is heavily fielded by immigrants. And we're already seeing economic impacts in a negative way because of the crackdown on immigration in the state of Texas. So we really do need to turn it around. Stephanie on Instagram, jumping on from Arizona. Yay. So excited to see Texas turning. Man, it's cool. Like the voting numbers of the turnout, like how many Democrats have come out versus Republicans is really exciting. I know that the Republicans are shaking in their boots. And, the pessimist in me is like, I wonder if like starting a war with Iran is cause for declaring some type of emergency in which we can't hold midterms or something like that, but the courts would block something like that. I mean, that's the thing that we have to consider. Of course, Trump is considering an executive order, which would prohibit voting by mail and which would require proof of citizenship at polling sites because Congress hasn't passed the SAVE Act and Trump wants to restrict voting. And so he's considering an executive memo on that, which obviously would have a chilling effect on voter turnout during the midterms. However, in order to have all of that occur, he would have to publish the memo in enough time for the rollout, which would also give enough time for the courts for a lawsuit to be filed and the courts to jump in on an injunction. So I have faith in our federal court system that any attempted attack on voter rights in advance of the midterms by the Trump administration would be blocked by the federal courts. That's my hope, but we'll be watching it closely. And of course, we'll be talking about all of that on this show as we go along. Okay, next question. What is an in absentia order? Okay, so an in absentia order is an order of deportation because somebody didn't show up to their court hearing, and the judge will order that person deported in absentia. Always, right? There's no, they don't like continue it. You can't call in sick. It doesn't even, if you're in the hospital, you still have to go to court. But there is an ability to file a motion to reopen an in absentia order if there were exceptional circumstances. And sometimes that can be you were really sick. Sometimes it could be that you didn't get notice of the hearing and you can reopen it. And one thing that's cool about motions to reopen in absentia orders is that they come with an automatic stay or stop of deportation. So oftentimes if I find somebody who comes to me for a consultation and they have a order of deportation in absentia, we'll rush to file a motion to reopen and they'll be protected against deportation while that's pending. So that's an in absentia order. Can I get residency through marriage if I entered illegally? Yes, you can. You'll need a waiver for unlawful presence if you do that. And so it's a process. And usually it's a 3-step process: family petition, waiver for unlawful presence, and then you go to the consulate in your country abroad. But there are some exceptions to that. And so it's always best to consult with a lawyer. We're going to be looking for if anybody in the family has served in the military, if you were petitioned before 2001, if you've suffered any kind of abuse or violence in your household. These are ways that we can get exceptions so that you can file an adjustment of status rather than a consular process. So it's possible, it's just longer and more stressful. Antonio on TikTok. Hola, mi oficial de aprobación por un DWI puede deportar, aunque ya haga cumplido y paga las multas. So, Antonio, eso depende en su estatus. No sé si ahora tiene estatus legal o está indocumentado. Necesitamos consultar sobre en qué estatus se encuentra en este momento y cuando recibió el condena. Es posible ser deportado después de un DWI, pero solo si no tiene estatus legal. Para los que ya tienen permiso de trabajo, tienen residencia o algo así, normalmente un DWI no resulta en una deportación porque es un misdemeanor. So normalmente no es que no cuenta, pero no resulta en una deportación. Ok, ya contesté esa pregunta. Can I apply if I have a deportation order? Yes, sometimes it depends on what we're applying for. These cases are very complicated. So consult. This is always my number one advice for anyone who's undocumented. Consult with an immigration lawyer just so you can find out if you're eligible for something and how long it would take and how much it would cost, but also so you can do a safety plan. Because when you're coming to a consultation with us, we are looking through your eligibility, but also, do you have kids? Are your kids at risk? Are there things that we need to do to protect your family? And we have a safety planning packet to fill out, list of important documents, the peace of mind plan for people who are undocumented, but you want to have a relationship with us, even though you can't get legal status. There's a lot of things that we can discuss and cover in a consultation. So just reach out. Antonio no tiene estatus. Okay, so sí, después de un arresto por DWI o un cargo, sí puede ser deportado, pero si no estás detenido, ya saliste y cumplido todo, me imagino que corre el riesgo de ser detenido manejando o saliendo de la casa porque inmigración está buscando gente en las calles en su trabajo y quizás estás ya en una lista de ellos. So debemos consultar para ver si hay una manera de arreglar. So sí corre el riesgo, pero inmediatamente probablemente no. Espero que eso fue de ayuda. Okay, who qualifies? This is a good question. Who qualifies for asylum in 2026? The same people who qualified for asylum in 2025, because asylum is a law that was passed by Congress that the president cannot change without the approval of Congress. What they did do was close the border, and they're not processing any asylum seekers. But the people who are inside the country still qualify for asylum in the same way. And that means you have a fear of returning to your country because you have been persecuted on account of a protected ground, like your race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership in a particular social group, right? So all of those people still qualify for asylum, and that hasn't changed. Antonio, no tengo estatus, pero cumplí con todo y solo me falta un mes para terminar. Sí, mi respuesta es igual. Are consultations free? Yes, they're still free. This is my commitment to the community during the Trump administration. What I want is for as many people to get the legal information that they need as possible. So we are not charging for consultations. They are in person or virtual. We have them on Saturdays. We are right now booking 2 days out. So if you called us today, you'd probably get an appointment on Thursday. And we do them on Zoom if you can't get into the office. So really no reason not to call. And if you want a consultation, I'm not allowed to say my phone number on live streams. They like block me if I do that. So just DM me or call the law firm. It's Lincoln-Goldfinch Law. I'm about to wrap up. So if anybody has questions or comments, go ahead and put them in the chat. And one more reminder, Texas is kicking off primary season, midterm season for the United States. We are one of the earliest primaries, Tuesday, March 3rd. The voters are deciding who their candidates are going to be in the Republican and the Democratic primary. We've got huge Democratic primary ballot here in Texas. I'm on the ballot for Texas House of Representatives District 50 in Northeast Austin. I'd love your support. If you haven't voted, come on down. And can you guess what the action item of the week is going to be? Because every week we talk about what's a way that we can get civically engaged. Well, yes, today we need to vote. So get yourselves down to the polls if you haven't already voted. You can vote in any polling location in your county. You don't have to stay in your precinct. So bring your ID, get yourself to the polls. Try to come before the end of the day if you can, just to avoid lines, because there are going to be lines after 5 o'clock. You can see right now there's like steady cars coming behind me, but no line. So you could get right in. I'm at 702 Pecan Street in Pflugerville, but there's lots of polling locations, and they're all, I think, pretty relatively quiet at the moment. So get yourselves to the polls. We'll see you on Thursday in Espanol, and at that point, we will know the outcome of my election. So wish me luck. I appreciate all your support, following along, and talk to you soon.